find their identity. After DeMarcus Cousins went down, the Pels played faster, scored more than anyone in the league, and pulled the biggest upset of the postseason, a first-round sweep of Portland. Minus Cuz, that momentum has many predicting an MVP-type season for Anthony Davis. But playoff and regular season Rajon Rondo has rolled out of town. What the new looks to the roster mean in New Orleans now.
In my eyes, I'm the best player in the game, you know, and I really feel that way, and nobody can tell me different.
Now you might get an argument from at least a couple of players in California, but not many others, and good for Anthony Davis. Why not? Feeling good about himself as the season gets going. Thanks for being there. For 10 points on the Pelicans, our Nolan's season preview. I'm Matt Weiner, Greg Anthony right here, Drew Gooden right over there. The first point on the team in the Big Easy is both big and easy to identify. AD, who at 25 is probably just now entering his prime and figures to put up huge numbers in Alvin Gentry's sped up system, rather. What would an MVP season look like for Anthony Davis?
I think they got to get home court in the first round.
So fourth seed or better?
Yeah, I think they're going to have to get there. And that's important because you look at what they lost in terms of DeMarcus Cousins and Rajon Rondo. So you could make the argument that this roster on paper isn't as good as the one they had a season ago. So if they can improve, he's going to be the beneficiary of that. And I think him making that statement, first of all, I loved it because all the great ones really feel that way. He truly believes that. But he also is going to control his own narrative.
Sure.
And putting that out there, he puts that in all of the forefront of all of our minds. And I think it is an argument. I think the guy is that good. He had an incredible season last year.
Now, on the flip side, I want to talk about what nobody else want to talk about. Does Anthony Davis even want to be in New Orleans? I mean, that's a big topic. And if you have a superstar guy that's not fully invested in the organization, are you going to get that same player from last year or the year before? I don't know. It's a lot of free agent movement. There's been a lot of player movement where guys want to go to their desired destination. I think Anthony Davis feels it's his turn to be outspoken right now. Hey, I'm not just the only, I want to go somewhere too. I want to go somewhere and win. And not only win, I want to be the MVP of this year. I think I'm the best guy in this league. But you can't do that without winning, and I think it's going to be really hard to be the best player in the NBA in New Orleans.
Now, your question is based, I assume, on the change in representation going to Clutch Sports. A lot of people dot connecting, have him already in L.A., despite the fact there are 2 years left on that contract.
Well, yeah, you see that interview? Did you see the eyebrow go up in that hood? Something's up, you know, and that didn't look like a guy that was thrilled about being in New Orleans at this particular moment. DeMarcus didn't come back. Free agency, I mean, they re-signed a couple guys. I think Rondo should have came back for him. I think that was a bad move of letting him go. But Anthony Davis is just, I think it's just one of those training camps. Like, here we go again. All the pressure's on me. Everybody's going to blame me this year if we don't get to the playoffs. I think he's looking for some love. And in that interview right there, I think it told a million words.
Yeah, and I do think when you feel you are the best player, you want to play on the biggest stage. And I'm not talking about the city. I'm talking about in the postseason. And if you're coming off the year they just had, the front office isn't showing him necessarily we're trying to compete for a championship. So we're going to let DeMarcus go, and we're going to also let Rajon Rondo. I get the DeMarcus move from the standpoint he's coming off the Achilles.
Right.
But you would have thought there would have been more of an effort to bring Rajon back with the impact he had on that team, with the leadership he provided, with the fact that not only did it help Anthony, it allowed Drew Holiday to move over to his natural position, have arguably his best season as a pro. So those are legitimate concerns that as a player, and we're in an era now where guys aren't going to just sit back and go play. They're going to question their front office. They're going to question the coaching staff because they are serious about winning. Because as you just said, ultimately, they're going to blame you if you don't win. And oftentimes you can't control whether you win because you don't build a team.
Well, all that comes on the heels of an impressive playoff series win. A stunner, not so much that they beat the Blazers, but that they swept them. What did we learn about the Pelicans and Alvin Gentry post-Boogie Cousins, after he went down on January 26th, played hyper fast, scored a ton. How does that carry over into this season?
Well, I think, one, it shows the brilliance, really, of Alvin Gentry in terms of what he was able to do. That's when you find out about a coach's ability. When they have to be faced with a lot of adversity, you lose a guy where you were trying to figure out how you're going to play both of them, because it's not easy to play those two guys at the same time. They had figured some things out. Remember, they didn't have Drew early in the season because of the injury. And then he just said, you know what, we're going to play fast. We're going to get up and down. We're going to put so much pressure on you defensively with how fast we play. And, boy, did it ever work. The question now, though, with the revamped roster, can you play that fast? You know, when you don't have a guy like Rajon Rondo, who is great at pushing it ahead, kicking the ball up. When you have a point guard that throws it ahead, wings run faster.
Right.
Bigs run.
Right.
You're bringing in now Elfrid Payton, not necessarily known as a pace guy. You're bringing in Jared Jack at this stage of his career, definitely not going to be a pace guy. So there are going to be a lot more questions heading into this training camp for New Orleans, not just with Anthony Davis and whether or not he's there long term, but what are we going to be this year? Are we a playoff team with arguably, you know, with definitely one of the 5 best players, I'd say, in the league? That's a big concern. If I got one of the 5 best players in the league, I should not be asking the question as to whether or not we're a playoff team.
Right.
Now, I would say this. I'm going to be a straight shooter on this one. The reason, and, you know, you could say coaching from Gentry's standpoint. You could say the team collectively got together after Cuz went down. But I'm going to say it was playoff Rondo at his best. He did it. He showed it. He could do it in Chicago the year before. They let him go. Didn't get to the playoffs last year. You got him going to New Orleans. We've seen another display of playoff Rondo. And now you let him go. So how do you fill that void? And I think it was a reach in the dark to go get Elfrid Payton and bring him in, because he, to me, is probably the closest thing to a Rajon Rondo out there to facilitate the team. And I call him the baby triple double guys. You know, the 7, 7, and 7 stat line. He's that guy, I think, that they will fill that void to be able to throw that pitch ahead pass, like you said, get the wings involved, get AD involved in the pick and roll into the basket or popping. So I think they're trying to fill that void, but let's be real. Rondo was the guy that really took that team into the playoffs and a sweep against the Blazers.
Drew Holiday was pretty spectacular as well in that Blazers series in particular, but playoff Rondo was huge. 12 assists a game over 2 series, the best assist average of his postseason career, but he's off in La La Land with LeBron now. Our David Griffin, for one, thinks he leaves behind a very large void.
But it was a really profound loss, I think, in New Orleans for them to lose Rondo. From a basketball IQ standpoint, which LeBron alluded to, from a veteran leadership standpoint, and most importantly, Drew Holiday played at an incredibly elite level when he did not have to be the one to facilitate for everyone, and he could focus on being an attacking guard. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see exactly what happens with that group in the absence of Rondo, because, again, I think they're a team that could potentially slide out of the playoff picture. And that's a big part of the reason why.
LeBron James described Rondo as cerebral. You've heard that from every coach who's ever been with him, whether they got along or not. After the fact, they say this guy is incredibly smart as a basketball player. How big of a hole is this?
I think it's tremendous. I don't know that they can replace. I think Drew hit it right on the head, because the thing about Rondo, what he allowed everybody to do, and you heard David talk about it, he put everybody in a position of comfort. You know, like he allowed you to not have to think. He allowed his teammates to play off instinct. He set the table. And I remember talking with Alvin Gentry about it during the season last year. He was blown away. He said he was basically my assistant head coach. You know, he would come up with game plans, strategies, nuance to the game. I mean, there's just so much he brought to the table. And then that leadership element is so critical, because when you think about Drew and Anthony, 2 great guys, 2 great teammates, but you don't necessarily think of them as being that leader. And they lead a little bit more quietly, more by example. But you do got to have somebody who's willing to challenge and willing to hold others accountable. And it can't just be your coach. So it's going to be a tremendous loss that I don't think that even if Elfrid Payton statistically has a solid year, that he can fill that void. So it's going to be a challenge. I do think that New Orleans could find themselves on the outside looking in from a playoff standpoint, and that would be a shame when you have a guy of the talent of Anthony Davis.
And how does this change Drew Holiday's season as well? You know, you heard David Griffin talking about it a moment ago, that Rondo allowed him to be a different kind of player than he's sometimes been asked to be.
And I think the organization saw that, and I think that's why they're comfortable starting him at the shooting guard position right now, and Elfrid Payton coming over from Phoenix to start at the point, because they feel that Drew Holiday is probably the best Drew at the two.
Yeah.
And the team is great, because one thing that playing a shooting guard position, if you can have a shooting guard that could also pass the ball, that's a double-edged sword right there. Having a point guard that can facilitate, and not only that, you pass it to your shooting guard who can also facilitate. I mean, that's a plus.
Yeah, and you know, playoff Rondo's gone. There is no playoff Peyton. there was Gary, but Elfrid hasn't been in the postseason yet, so we don't know what playoff Peyton looks like. Lots more to get to here on the Pelicans, including their summer free agents work. Julius Randle, how he figures to fit in New Orleans.